The courtroom buzzed with low murmurs and the dull scrape of chairs on tile. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting a pale, sterile glow over worn-out benches and gray suits. Another routine day in County Courtroom 3B. Nothing special. Nothing new. Until he walked in. He didn't storm through the double doors or make a dramatic entrance. He walked in quietly. No entourage, no flashy suit. Just a slim black teenager in a navy sweater and polished shoes, holding a small leather folder. His presence was unassuming, the kind most people overlook, but the silence that followed said otherwise. Heads turned, eyebrows lifted. A few whispered to each other. One man chuckled. The bailiff squinted like he'd seen a ghost wearing the wrong badge. And behind the bench, Judge Richard Halden looked up with the kind of expression that could turn water to dust. The boy didn't flinch. He moved straight toward the defense table, setting down his folder with precision and confidence that didn't match his age. He pulled out a pen, clicked it once, and calmly waited. The judge cleared his throat. Young man, he said, trying to match authority with confusion. The juvenile court is down the hall. No response. Are you here with your parent or guardian, or are you lost? Still nothing. The boy simply reached into his folder and slid out a legal document, placing it flat on the table. It bore the county seal and a single name, Jalen Thompson, signed and certified as counsel of record. The bailiff stepped forward, frowning. Sir, do you need help finding the right courtroom? Jalen turned, finally speaking. Calm, deliberate, every syllable controlled. No, sir, I'm exactly where I need to be. The judge blinked. You're, what, an intern? A clerk? I'm the defense attorney, Jalen replied without even a hint of sarcasm. Representing Ms. Latasha King, laughter rippled through the gallery. One of the reporters from the Daily Chronicle actually stood up to get a better look. Judge Halden scoffed, tapping the gavel once. Let's not make a circus out of this. Mr. Thompson, this court has no time for pranks. This is a felony hearing. Real consequences. Jalen didn't raise his voice, didn't blink, just slid another document across the table. Bar credentials, signed off by the state licensing board. The room went still. The judge stared at the paper for a full 5 seconds. Then 10. He looked up again, slowly, like the room had tilted sideways. You passed the bar? Yes, Your Honor. At what age? 19. A hush fell so heavy you could hear a phone vibrate 3 rows back. Somewhere in the crowd, someone muttered, "No way." Judge Halden leaned back, adjusting his robe like it might choke him. And you're representing the defendant of your own volition? Yes. And you believe you're qualified? I don't believe it, Your Honor. I'm certified. That line landed like a cold slap across the room. The judge didn't respond right away. His eyes narrowed, not with suspicion, but something more uncomfortable. Recognition. The kind of realization that creeps up on a man raised to underestimate what doesn't look like him. He finally gestured to the prosecutor. Mr. Langston, any objection? The prosecutor, a middle-aged man with thinning hair and a smug expression, shook his head too quickly. If the credentials check out, I guess we'll see if the young man can handle himself. Very well, the judge said, his voice strained. Court is in session. But the tone was different now. The mockery had faded, replaced by tension you could cut with a closing argument. Jalen didn't acknowledge the shift. He simply opened his folder, clicked his pen again, and began taking notes as if he'd been doing this for years. Not a single flinch, not a single word wasted. He wasn't here for their approval, he was here for justice. On the other side of the room, the defendant, Latasha King, a single mother accused of theft, sat wide-eyed, disbelief written across her face. Her hands trembled as she leaned toward Jalen. "You're really my lawyer?" she whispered. He nodded once, his voice low. Yes, ma'am. And we're going to win. She didn't know whether to cry or laugh, so she just smiled. The first time she had all week. The courtroom had changed. The moment he walked in, something ancient cracked, something invisible, but felt by everyone. The assumptions, the labels, the lazy glances. This wasn't just about a teenager with a law degree. This was about the system itself. The unspoken rules of who gets to belong and who gets told to wait their turn. Judge Halden shifted again, trying to reclaim control of the room. Proceed with your opening statement, he said, almost like a dare. Jalen stood, adjusted his sleeves, walked to the center of the courtroom, alone but not intimidated. He looked the judge in the eye, then the jury, then the prosecutor, and finally his client. My name is Jalen Thompson, he began, and today I'm going to prove that truth doesn't care how old you are, what color you are, or how many people expect you to fail. Silence. Total electric silence. He let the words hang in the air for a moment, then returned to his seat. No theatrics. No smirk. Just truth, dropped like a gavel. The judge tapped his pen against the desk once. He didn't say it out loud, but the look on his face said everything. This just became a real case. If the courtroom had been a hive of skepticism before, now it was a minefield of expectations. Every glance toward Jalen was loaded, half curiosity, half disbelief. The judge sat back stiffly. The prosecutor shuffled papers with too much effort, and the gallery leaned in like spectators before a boxing match, waiting for the first punch to land. Jalen didn't give them theatrics. He gave them preparation. As the prosecution launched its case, Jalen sat perfectly still. Every objection he raised was razor sharp. Every note he took was strategic. He never once interrupted without purpose. The courtroom had seen seasoned attorneys get rattled by Judge Halden's style, abrupt, condescending, sometimes cruel. But Jalen wasn't shaken. He was focused. The prosecution called their key witness, a store manager who claimed to have seen Latasha King steal a designer purse worth over $2,000. His testimony was clean, practiced, too perfect. I saw her reach over the counter, slip the purse into her shopping bag, and walk right out. The prosecutor nodded. And you're absolutely certain it was her? 100%. Judge Halden glanced at Jalen. Your witness. Jalen stood calm as ever. He didn't pace. He didn't raise his voice. He simply walked to the stand and pulled out a printed receipt. Mr. Rollins, can you confirm the timestamp on this sales receipt? The manager squinted. 3:07 p.m. Jalen nodded. And what time did you claim the theft occurred? About 3:15. Jalen held the receipt higher. So you're saying the person you saw stealing the purse had already purchased it 8 minutes earlier? The courtroom murmured. The judge leaned forward. Order. The witness hesitated. I don't know. Maybe it was another purse. Jalen clicked his pen once. You testified under oath that you were certain. 100%. Did you see my client's receipt when you filed the police report? No. Did you review security footage before accusing her? The manager shifted in his seat. I didn't have to. I recognized her. Jalen turned slowly to the jury. Recognized her or made a snap judgment? No one answered, but the silence spoke volumes. The prosecutor leapt to his feet. Objection. Argumentative. Sustained, the judge said, though even he looked uneasy, but the damage had been done. A perfect witness had just unraveled, not because he was caught lying, but because Jalen exposed the assumption underneath it. The same assumption Clara made at the gate. The same one Judge Halden made the second Jalen stepped into that courtroom. Jalen didn't argue the bias, he revealed it. Piece by piece, the prosecution's case began to collapse. Surveillance footage showed Latasha entering the store at 2:55 p.m. She paid in full at 3:07. The timestamp matched her bank statement and the store's POS logs. The manager had only noticed her after she exited, when a white customer reported suspicious behavior. The case had never been about theft. It had been about perception, and Jalen knew it. During recess, whispers rippled through the hallways. Reporters were scrambling to find out more about the kid lawyer. Some thought he was a prodigy, others a publicity stunt. One legal blogger tweeted, "Teen attorney wipes the floor with prosecution. This isn't court. It's a masterclass." Meanwhile, Judge Halden sat in chambers staring at Jalen's bar application again. Everything checked out. Perfect scores, accelerated law degree, letters of recommendation from professors twice his age. The boy had earned his seat and Halden had mocked it. That bothered him more than he'd admit. Court resumed. The prosecutor shifted tactics. Less aggressive now. He tried to cast doubt, to blur the clarity Jalen had created. But Miss King didn't mention the receipt when she was arrested, he said. "Isn't that suspicious?" Jalen stood without hesitation. She didn't mention it because she was stunned to be accused of something she didn't do. Being wrongfully accused isn't something you plan for. It's something you survive. No one objected. No one moved. Jalen walked toward the jury box and held up the purse, the actual one Latasha bought. "This is the purse in question, purchased legally with a receipt. And now, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I ask you, does justice mean punishment or proof?" It was more than a closing argument. It was a reckoning. Judge Halden stared at the boy longer than necessary before finally nodding. "The jury will now deliberate." The room emptied in quiet waves. Latasha sat back, her eyes full. She reached over and touched Jalen's arm. "No matter what happens," she said, "you've already changed my life." He offered a small smile. "We're not done yet." Outside, camera crews were already forming. Reporters shoved microphones at anyone with a suit. The bailiff had to remind them twice that filming wasn't allowed inside. Jalen waited with his client in silence. 29 minutes later, and the jury returned. The foreperson rose, holding the verdict slip. "In the matter of the state versus Latasha King, we find the defendant not guilty." Gasps. Relief. Applause muffled by order. Latasha wept. Jalen remained still, just a quiet nod, like he'd expected nothing less. Judge Halden tapped the gavel once, then looked up, locking eyes with the teenager he'd tried to dismiss. He cleared his throat. "Mr. Thompson, well done. No sarcasm, no mockery, just respect. Raw and overdue." Jalen nodded once. "Thank you, Your Honor." And just like that, he turned and walked out, not with a strut, but with steady purpose, the way he'd walked in. Quiet, confident, unshaken. Behind him, the courtroom was no longer the same, because once someone sees the truth, they can't unsee it. Jalen didn't become a courtroom prodigy by accident. Long before the not guilty verdict, long before the cameras or headlines, Jalen Thompson was just another kid most people overlooked or underestimated. His story didn't start in a Harvard lecture hall or on the floor of a courtroom. It started in a cramped apartment above a corner store in East Oakland with a single mom and a beat-up bookshelf missing half its titles. His mother, Rochelle, worked 3 jobs: cleaning offices by night, running food orders by day, raising a black son in a city that judged first and asked questions later. That was a full-time job on its own. But Rochelle didn't raise a victim. She raised a weapon. Jalen grew up with a mind that devoured everything: books, patterns, people. While other kids were playing video games, Jalen was watching court hearings on YouTube. Not for punishment, for fun. He'd pause mid-sentence and whisper what the objection would be. He didn't just want to know what lawyers did. He wanted to know why it worked. When he was 9, he checked out a used copy of To Kill a Mockingbird from a thrift store. The pages were torn, the spine cracked, but by the time he finished it, Something lit inside him that never turned off. Injustice wasn't just a plot line, it was personal, because Jalen had already seen what injustice looked like. When his best friend Marcus got shoved against a locker by a school security guard for walking suspiciously. When his cousin got expelled for disruptive behavior after asking why their classroom didn't have working heat. When he walked into a store with his hoodie up and watched the clerk follow him like a shadow. He didn't need to read about bias. He lived it. But instead of screaming, Jalen studied. Instead of breaking things, he built arguments. His mind became a scalpel, clean, precise, and deadly effective. At 14, he wrote an essay titled, "Your Honor, You Don't Know Me." It was raw, angry, honest. His English teacher cried. That essay ended up being read at a youth justice panel in San Francisco. A retired civil rights lawyer in the audience tracked him down afterward and handed him a card. "You've got a courtroom soul," the man said. "Don't waste it." That man, Lionel Kessler, became Jalen's first mentor. He invited Jalen into his study once a week, feeding him dusty law books and even dustier stories. The kind of stories that don't show up in textbooks. The kind where justice was bent, broken, or bought. Jalen soaked it in like gospel. By 16, Jalen was taking college-level pre-law courses online. By 17, he passed the California State Bar's Baby Bar, a feat so rare it made local news. But Jalen didn't chase headlines. He chased leverage because he knew something no one else seemed to understand. The system doesn't fix itself. You have to learn it, speak it, then use it to flip the damn table. Back in the present, the buzz from the Latasha King trial hadn't faded. If anything, it was just getting started. The story went viral, not because of the verdict, but because of who delivered it. A black teenager in a suit. With facts, not fury. The optics were too powerful to ignore. TV segments ran titles like Teen Legal Eagle Shock's Courtroom and The Future of Justice Has a Name. Some tried to twist it. Affirmative action in action, one anchor sneered. But Jalen wasn't watching. He was already knee-deep in his next case. This time, it wasn't just about the law. It was personal. A friend of his, Devin Marks, had just been charged with resisting arrest and assaulting an officer. Classic setup. Devin was helping a neighbor with car trouble. A cruiser pulled up, assumed the worst, and within minutes he was cuffed, bruised, and booked. The charge. He flinched. Jalen knew the pattern. It was always about making someone small look dangerous. You criminalize presence. You reframe fear as aggression, and you trust that no one will ask too many questions, especially if the defendant is poor, tired, or black. But this time, Devin had Jalen, and Jalen had something else, the attention of a nation. Back in court, Judge Halden was still processing what had happened. He hadn't changed overnight. Bias doesn't dissolve with a verdict. But something had cracked. Maybe it was the way Jalen never lost his temper. Maybe it was the moment he realized how deep his own assumptions ran. Or maybe, just maybe, he realized the courtroom wasn't his kingdom anymore. It was Jalen's battlefield. Halden called a closed-door meeting. When Jalen walked into chambers, the judge didn't speak for several seconds. Finally, he said, "You caught me off guard." "That was the point," Jalen replied with zero apology. "I underestimated you. That wasn't the point, but it was expected." The judge nodded slowly. "You have something, the kind of clarity I haven't seen in a long time." Jalen crossed his arms. Clarity doesn't change verdicts. Leverage does. Halden's mouth tightened. "You think the system's broken?" "No," Jalen said. "I think it's working exactly how it was designed. I just speak its language better than it wants me to." And with that, he left. That night, Jalen sat alone in his apartment. The inbox was flooded. Requests for interviews, podcast invites, even a book agent. But he ignored them all. He scrolled instead to a text from his mom. "I'm proud of you, but stay sharp. They love you today. They'll test you tomorrow." He stared at the words. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then he typed back, "They can test me, but you better come with facts, because I've already done the homework. The courtroom may have emptied, but the echoes never really left. What Jalen did in that room, he didn't just win a case. He cracked something deeper in the walls, in people, in a system that long mistook silence for submission. But the spotlight, that was never the goal. Jalen didn't care for the headlines. He didn't update his bio. He didn't start selling merch. In fact, he turned most media requests down, except one. A high school on the South Side had invited him to speak. Not for fame, just for clarity, just so a room full of kids who looked like him could see what was possible. So one rainy Thursday morning, he walked into James Baldwin High, wearing the same sharp navy suit he wore in court. He didn't bring a slideshow. He didn't bring a speech. He brought something harder, the truth. He stood in front of a cracked whiteboard and scanned the rows of young faces, half curious, half bored. Then he said it. "I didn't come here to inspire you. I came here to warn you." That got their attention. He went on, "The world will not hand you the benefit of the doubt. Not if you're smart, not if you're loud, not if you're right. You will be underestimated, ignored, corrected by people who are wrong, and mocked by people who should be listening. They will see your skin before they see your skill. They will mistake your calm for weakness, and your excellence, it will make them uncomfortable." A girl in the third row raised her hand. "So what do we do?" Jalen didn't pause. "You build armor out of truth. You read everything. You study everyone. You get so good they can't look away." The gym fell quiet. There were no applause breaks. Just a long, heavy silence, the kind that meant they heard him. That night, the principal called Jalen and said, "You lit a fire. Half my staff's in tears. Some students are talking about law school for the first time in their lives." But Jalen didn't smile. He simply said, "Good, because they're going to need soldiers." The next few months moved fast. Jalen became the name whispered in legal circles. Not a prodigy, a problem. He started picking up cases no one wanted to touch. Pro bono, work for those who couldn't afford representation. He took down shady landlords, corrupt school boards, and a police department that had misplaced body cam footage in 3 separate excessive force cases. By 19, he wasn't just practicing law, he was rewriting it. But with power came pressure. Some judges respected him, others resented him. The system didn't like being out-argued by someone it didn't invite in. He was called cocky, arrogant, unprofessional. All code for he makes us uncomfortable and doesn't flinch when we try to make him smaller. They tried to stall him, delay motions, burden him with paperwork, box him in, but you can't box in someone who grew up climbing out of tighter corners. One DA even pulled him aside. "You're sharp," he said, "but you're pushing too hard. These people you're going up against, they play dirty. They have friends in high places." Jalen leaned in. "So do I," he whispered. "They're just waiting for someone to kick the door in." Back in court, a new case brought the tension to a head. A teenage girl, Naomi Richards, was facing 10 years for felony assault. She had been grabbed by an off-duty officer while trying to stop her little brother from being arrested for loitering outside a grocery store. She pushed him off. He hit his head. They charged her like she was a career criminal. No one wanted the case. Jalen took it in one phone call. He spent nights poring over footage, gathering witness statements, uncovering security camera angles the prosecution didn't think mattered. The final day of court, the judge warned him not to grandstand. Jalen responded with the facts, just the facts, but each sentence carried weight. He wasn't performing. He was excavating truth in real time. When he rested his case, the judge went silent for almost 2 minutes. Then he said, "Mr. Thompson, in all my years on this bench, I have never seen someone your age or any age command the truth with such precision. This court owes you an apology. And Ms. Richards, this court owes you your freedom." Case dismissed. And just like that, another wall fell. By the time Jalen turned 21, he had been featured in Time, The Atlantic, and had an op-ed published in the New York Times. The headline, "I wore a suit so you'd listen. Now I dare you to hear me without it." It went viral, but Jalen didn't change. Still no entourage. Still no press team. He didn't need validation. He already had a mission. He once said in an interview, "I don't care if you remember my name. I care if you remember that silence is a choice. And justice, real justice, doesn't wear a name tag." Years later, in a different courtroom, a young white judge introduced himself to a nervous black teen preparing for trial. "You remind me of someone," the judge said. "Smart, unapologetic, dangerous to the right people." The kid looked up. "Jalen Thompson?" The judge nodded. "He changed everything."